Welcome, everybody. This is the third sitting of our global book launch of Change Leader by Dr. Jen Frahm, and it's wonderful to have you here with us this evening in Melbourne anyway. So we appreciate you making the time. Let me begin by acknowledging that I'm hosting this event from the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. And I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which you all join us from today, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who may be participating in this event. I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and their ongoing connections to the lands and waters of our country. I'm Lena Ross, based in Melbourne, Australia, like Jen is, and I'm a change consultant with my own practice called Change Hacks. And with Jen, I'm the co-founder of the Agile Change Leadership Institute. Jen and I go back a few years when our paths crossed when we worked at a big bank based here in Melbourne, but working on separate projects. And one of our mutual colleagues said to me, "You need to meet Jen Frahm, because I think you two are going to have lots to talk about." And that we did, and that we still do, and that we will continue to do, and have lots to talk about. And what we did was, I think we really cemented our partnership when we both launched our books in 2017 at the Transit Bar in Melbourne. I know some of you here today were with us on that evening. And it was a great book launch event. It was our first books, and it was also a great way to split a bar tab. So Australians love splitting a bar tab. So I think that was a great way to seal the deal. But here we are, and what we're going to do is, you are not only going to hear about the new book, but you're also going to hear from the panel, some of whom contributed to the book, and their insights. And you'll also have the opportunity to ask questions after we hear from the panel, and your thoughts as well. So you're welcome to submit questions in the chat at any time, and we'll keep an eye on that. So Jen, this is your third book. Jen is an expert in organisational change. She works with clients in multiple industries across 28 countries, where she coaches and nudges. And while some call her a thought leader, from my perspective, she does so much more than that. She designs and delivers change that sticks. So this book follows Conversations of Change in 2017 and the Agile Change Playbook in 2020. And here we are in 2021, Jen, with your third book. Congratulations, and welcome to Change Leader and Dr. Jen Frahm.
Thanks, Lena. Thanks. And wow, this is the third event for the day. They've been really amazing in terms of contributions and questions. And can I just say, I'm so grateful to all of you, both in terms of the panel, but all of those who are coming in to join us this evening or this morning, whatever the time is for you, from the perspective of last year was really, really rough, and that you can make the time and have the generosity to join us in yet another Zoom room is really, really special. And so I just want to acknowledge that and say thank you so much for coming.
Now, Jen, everyone's probably dying to know, how did this book come about? What prompted you to feel that Change Leader was needed?
Yeah, thanks, Lena. Look, it was interesting. This book actually started probably about 2 years ago, maybe. I think it was 2018 or 2019, I can't recall. And I'd mind mapped it all out, and I had the chapters ready with what I was going to do. And then, of course, Brené Brown publishes Dare to Lead. And I go, crap, I can't release this now because she said it all. And, you know, Brené Brown has wanted to do that to me a few times now, which, you know, is quite annoying. But whatever reason, I felt that there was too much similarities, and I kind of like having something that's unique in the work that I put out there. And so I shelved it. And then it came to later last year in October, and I was having a conversation with Donna Hardman, who writes the foreword in the book. And she called me for some of the challenges she was facing in the work that she was doing in advising boards. And over the course of that conversation, you know, she sort of suggested that what I was providing to her was extremely valuable. And she posed the question, Jen, how do we scale you? And, you know, and really the answer to that was, well, I think I need to dust off that book and reevaluate it in context of the space we're in right now, and work on it from that perspective, which is what I did. So we can thank Donna Hardman, really, and the challenges that she had for making me dust it off and get it out there.
And look, Jen, we know it's definitely out there because I've already spoken to so many people who've got a copy of Change Leader. And I know many in the Zoom room tonight or in this session also have a copy. So also please feel free to share in the chat panel what your favourite parts are about Jen's book or any comments you have about it. Personally, one of my favourite parts of the book, Jen, are how tangible your change actions are, how you make them real and things that people can actually go and do straight away. Can you give us a little more insight into those actions that you've got in there?
Happy to, Lena. So the book looks at really 33 different domains or topics that in the work that I do with leaders that I was finding, look, these are the kind of things that really equip you to continue leading disruptive change. And I think many of you know that I used to be an academic. And so whilst there is, there's a level of theoretical value in it, I'm also a failed academic. I didn't last very long in academia because, I really value pragmatism and, things that you can do immediately. So it was important to me that with these 33 domains that we could pull out what are discrete, concrete change actions that a leader could try next week. That, if we looked at some form of assessing how they are across those 33 domains today, if they tried those change actions over the next couple of weeks, how far would they reach? How far would they shift in their leadership practice? And so that was really, what we were looking at in terms of the concrete change actions that came out of it.
Trying to let some people in the room. Hang on.
Yes, I just did.
Thank you very much. That's probably why I can't do it. Both did at the same time. Okay, thanks so much, Jen, for that. I love those change actions too. Like I said, they're so practical and they are really doable and real. Another thing I really enjoyed about the book was how you collaborated with others to draw on their expertise. And we're so lucky to have a couple of those people here with us on the panel today. And with the esteemed panel that we have, we know all of them work with boards or clients or perhaps both. So in this session, just to be clear, they're not representing those boards or clients, they're actually representing themselves. And so this is why we've asked them to share their personal stories and thoughts about change leadership and in fact your book. Now we'd love to hear from the panel in terms of a quick intro about how they've come to be on the panel and how they've crossed paths with you and joined this change leadership interest. So we'll start with Helen, who's joining us from the United Kingdom. Welcome, Helen.
Thank you. Hi, Lena, and Jen, and everybody. So yeah, greetings from Coventry, in England. So just a little bit about me. I'm my job title is Chief Transformation Officer, and I work in a team called Horizons. And basically, I work for the National Health Service in England. As a change leader, and I work at a national level and in a huge system. So the system that I'm part of and I help to enable change in has 1.5 million people working in it and provides care for 54 million people. And yeah, I've just spent the last year organising massive change programmes virtually around the kind of topics that you would expect a health system to be working in during a pandemic. So testing, operational delivery of vaccinations, the well-being of our people, health inequalities, and now very much focused on how we actually recover our core health services as we look to a world beyond the pandemic. And one little thing I'm proud of is I helped to run something called the School for Change Agents, which is a free kind of virtual school, and 100,000 people have been through our school. what I'll do is I'll put a link in the box if anybody is interested in that.
Yeah.
And how do I know Jen? I just know Jen. Jen is a global presence, and we're in a lot of the same spaces because we kind of think the same things, and I appreciate all the wisdom and everything that you give to the world, Jen, in such a generous way. Yeah. So, do you want me to reflect on what I learned about leadership in 2020, or am I going to do that later?
We might come back to that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Yeah.
Hold
Anyway,
on.
that's me.
Thanks so much, Helen. Thanks for that introduction. Our next panel member, who's geographically adjacent to the United Kingdom, in France, we've got Celine Schillinger. Welcome, Celine. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you know Jen.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lena, and hi, Jen. And a bit the same as Helen, I just know Jen. I think we met on Twitter many years ago.
Twitterverse.
Yeah, I think so. We connected on LinkedIn 5 years ago, but I think we had already met on Twitter before that. And I have been inspired by Jen, like many people have been, I'm sure. And we were in tune on so many topics. We had a very interesting conversation about change management and change leadership a few years ago. I remember that. And my job here is being a consultant for the last 3 years. I used to be a corporate activist working in a large pharmaceutical company. With all the good sides and the bad sides of a large company. And in that work, I had been extremely, and I'm still extremely inspired by Helen's work. And I have developed a practice around activism in the workplace, for the workplace, to not only improve the way people work together, but also to improve performance, actual corporate performance. So I think there's a lot to learn from social movements and from social networks, technology, etc. So I'm trying to blend all that. And of course, it requires a change in behaviors from what traditional leaders have been taught to do. And that's why they need to read this book. So thank you again for having me here.
Thanks so much, Celine. Now, while we're still in Europe, we're going to hear from Luc Galoppin, who is in Belgium. And Luc, you've joined us again. You were with us this morning, which was past midnight your time. And we really appreciate you doing that then and appreciate you coming back again. So Luc, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I had a night to sleep over this and to rehearse my introduction. So first of all, how do I know Jen? I was going to joke, who's Jen? But I know her for more than 10 years. We've been active in the Change Management Practitioners group on LinkedIn. And from there on, we just stuck together and we visit the same virtual pubs and spaces. I don't think we've ever met physically before, but we know each other 10 years. And I have the feeling that I know her as a friend, which makes the reading of this book quite different. When you think about just a light read and an update on whatever is going on in the space of leadership and the latest insights, knowing Jen and then seeing all the challenges, those change actions, makes this book not a pleasant read, but an annoying read, because it puts myself in front of the mirror and look at myself and having to open up those boxes which I thought I could just leave closed and there in a corner. So I'm opening up those boxes. Thank you, Jen. Thanks, no thanks. And then maybe 2 words about myself. I am a solo practitioner. I work with leadership teams, but I also have had the opportunity to work with neighborhoods and to work with the social capital of neighborhoods. Now, that's a very exciting theme to talk about. I can just close by saying I am excited by 2 specific topics. That's ABCD, and that stands for Asset-Based Community Development. And the second thing I'm passionate about is the self as an instrument. But I will stop here.
Thanks, Luc. That's awesome. So how diverse is our panel, and yet coming together with similar interests and objectives. I love it. Now, we're moving over to South Africa to introduce you to Jillian Riley, who's one of the co-authors of Chapter 5 in Change Leader. Welcome, Jillian.
Hello. Greetings from Cape Town. I'm a recovering American here in Cape Town. I came to South Africa in 1993 to be a part of this country's transition to democracy, and have worked since then on everything from community-based change to social change, organizational and individual. And I think I continue to be driven by an interest in how do we really enable human potentiality? How do we move beyond problem solving into creating experiences and situations where people can really find their full potential? I describe myself as an explorer, and my interest is around how we engage our exploratory instincts to move beyond our boundaries, to step into that potential that I described. And I think it's because I'm an explorer that I know Jen and Celine several years ago, as part of me kind of learning about how we create environments that really help people tap into their potential. I ran things called courage camps, which I co-facilitated one of them with Celine in France, and Jen was supposed to be there, but she couldn't come. And then she and I started to dream and collude about running a similar camp in Australia, which didn't happen. But we continued over a course of many years to kind of explore our shared interests, which is how we thrive in uncertainty, how we continue to evolve. And I think that that's what you've done so beautifully with this book, Jen, is to seize this moment to help us really think intentionally about that. So one of the chapters in the book is around exploratory leadership. And that was probably a highlight for me, Jen, of last year, was having the opportunity to take some of my thinking around an explorer's mindset and apply it to a leadership context. So I'm sure we'll talk about that more over the hour.
Yes, I've seen that, Jillian. It's really interesting stuff. So I encourage everyone to look into that. Thank you. We're swinging back to our home country, Australia now. And another co-author of one of the chapters is Melissa Dark. Welcome, Melissa.
Thanks so much, Lena and Jen, for inviting me. Just a little about me. I've been working in organisational communication, collaboration and change for almost 30 years now, and currently really exploring that space of collaboration, and in fact collaborate with Jen to produce Busting Silos, which is a training program around trying to, I guess, reduce organisational boundaries and barriers and create better collaboration inside and out of organisations. And Jen and I have known each other for more than 10 years. We originally met through the International Association of Business Communicators. I think I was president of the chapter in Victoria at the time, and Jen joined. And I think Sean put in the chats that we gravitate to people who are cool and think similar to us. And I think that was a very good description of my meeting with Jen, as I thought she was pretty cool, and we felt similarly about a lot of things. And I think we sort of bonded and cemented our friendship at an IABC conference not long after, where we were in Toronto and bonded over our dislike of ice wine. So yeah. And I should say I was very honoured to be invited by Jen to contribute to chapter 2 of this book, which references quite a bit of the sort of thinking we did when we put together the Busting Silos program about collaboration and about creating, I guess, better ways of working together.
Fantastic. Thanks, Melissa. Also from Australia, but another part of Australia, and representing the C-suite, and from an industry with major disruption. Hello, Sean Elwick. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Lena. Yes, higher education. So I'm a CIO with Swinburne University. higher education in Australia in the last 12 to 18 months actually has been really disrupted. So there's the geopolitical issues between Australia and China, so that really impacted the international student market from China. So there was a revenue impact there, and obviously then COVID really exacerbated that. So the whole business model that a lot of Australian universities were based upon has really sort of fallen apart. On top of that, obviously we've had to transition to teaching online, which is really challenging for our academics. And it's interesting that Jen spoke before about being a failed academic. I have to live and breathe that every day. But to give them their due, it feels like we've hopped in the TARDIS and really sort of fast forwarded 5 to 10 years in terms of mindset around what can be done in terms of the digital change. So it's really interesting how a catalyst event like COVID can really introduce change. So I'm a CIO. I've been CIO in various organisations for about 9 years now. Prior to that, I was a consultant. Big Four, but also running my own business for a period of time. Not a change professional as such, but certainly someone who's delivered a lot of change over my career. And I guess my approach to being a CIO is to really, I seem to inherit places that need a little bit of a fixer-upper kind of thing, and sort of come in and I really like leaving a legacy that is there for future generations. How do I know Jen? I was actually thinking about this the other day, Jen. I just don't know. We just seem to know each other. And
Spotless.
So that'd be
Spotless was the first point.
Over 10 years. So we have run into each other on various projects, and I have had the absolute honour and privilege of having Jen work with me on various change programs. And what I love about Jen is she's a big thinker, and that comes through in the book. But if something needs to be done, she's just pragmatic as well. And I think that balance between being really pragmatic but being a really big thinker is rare. And she's still my go-to person if I've got a sticky problem. I'm seeking some counsel, and we're going to catch up for a glass of wine or some stuff next week. If there's a change problem, it's like, Jen. Guru, Dr. Jen.
How nice to hear those diverse perspectives, and all with the common denominator of knowing Jen and admiring Jen. I think that's fantastic. We're going to now launch into a couple of questions to understand how change leadership has been impacted by recent events. And Jen, I will kick off with you, and then we'll take a question or two to the panel, and then we'll open it up. So the first question is, what did we learn about leadership in 2020?
Look, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that we saw this it's like the sorting hat. Those leaders who had really invested in themselves in terms of both not just professional development, but personal development rose to the top. Those that had not invested in themselves really, really, really struggled. We talk a lot about, you can take a horse to water, you can't make it drink. By the end of 2020, I think we had a lot of thirsty horses. Finally it had become quite real for the leaders out there, the importance of actually coming up to speed with new ways of working, new ways of leading, new ways of thinking. So I think the cleaving, if you like, of those that had invested in themselves versus those that hadn't became very, very obvious.
Awesome. Let's open that question up to the panel. Should we start with Helen again? Helen, what did we learn about leadership in 2020?
I think we learned a lot of things, but one of the things, Lena, that I'd say certainly in my context is as how important it is as leaders to focus on inequalities and issues like power and privilege. When you work in a health system, our system, was impacted, our country so badly. In the UK, I think 4.4 million people got COVID, and 128,000 people died. So we saw a huge amount of distress and tragedy, and we also just saw how amazing our people were, and the way in which people rallied round, innovated, made things happen really quickly. But the people that were most impacted and particularly unequally were people from colleagues from ethnic minority backgrounds. I think women got the brunt of it as well. And like where we are now as a system, both I think as a looking at things from a leadership perspective, both looking inside the system and at our wider society, we have to have a stronger focus on inequality. And as leaders, we have to start from that place. And again, in the book, Jen talks about power and being really explicit about power. And I think, as a result of COVID, even more so, and I think specifically tackling inequalities of power.
That's very insightful. That's great. Thanks for that. Especially, in Australia, I don't think we can really understand the depth of the impact in your part of the world either, with what's happened in the last 12 months. So we may hear from someone else on the other side of the world. Does someone from out of Australia want to share their thoughts on the last year and what leaders have learnt about leadership in 2020 before we bring it back to a more local perspective here? Jillian or Celine or Luke? It doesn't matter what order.
I can jump in because I have the same observation as I shared yesterday, and that is it was painful. And I think in the chat, Sean somewhere describes it as being immediately on display. It was very tragic to see that some people in a high leadership position had very low maturity, and when the bandwidth is reduced to just this virtual wire, it shows very explicitly other people who were not specifically in a leadership position or a high power position. There we saw that they have the connective power of having worked and having done the homework emotionally, relationally, and having had the preparation. They link people. They are a linkage themselves. They are they themselves are an instrument. And I saw a lot of maturity there. But the most painful thing to watch was people in a high power position who did not do their homework, emotionally speaking.
Yeah. It's really put leadership in the spotlight, and I think we realised that in the last two sessions as well. Jill, what's your perspective on that? What did we learn in 2020?
Well, I think it forced all of us, and certainly leaders, to reevaluate, assess our relationship with control and with certainty, because those things were taken away, right? If our mental model around our value and our means of influencing and organizing were built out completely around controlling people, controlling process, and certainty around outcomes, then it was, an incredibly difficult time. And then, as you said, we saw others who were able to step into that uncertainty and find a moment, as you described, Sean, to actually learn. And I think the ways in which we begin to see uncertainty as a learning exercise, as opposed to a threat to our power, is essential. And for me, and for those of the people I know who've come through it feeling richer, if you will, it's because they learned and not because they held on by their fingernails. And I think that's a challenge for all leaders moving forward, is to understand that their job is to continually learn and evolve, as opposed to just try and ride waves of uncertainty and keep holding on to the control that they think they have.
Yeah, certainly was a disruptor from that point of view. Thanks so much, Jill. I think what we'll do is let's build on that question now with the rest of the panel, perhaps, and look at what do you think leaders then need to change first as a result of 2020. So who'd like to kick that off? It can be Celine. Celine, of course. Go.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Lena. I so much agree with what's been said before, and I've been thinking about this, suggestion. What can we suggest? What if we are in any position to suggest anything to anybody else? Everything is so contextually dependent. Anyway, I think right now we need to steer more. But beware, there's a subtlety with steering. Steering, I mean, not in an engineering way. We need to resist the temptation to affect others by direct intervention. Because it doesn't work as we intend most of the time. It's not by changing others, by changing organizations, by changing labels, whatever. Direct intervention generally doesn't work. Maybe first and foremost because it doesn't create ownership, because it does not come from the people. So instead, we need to direct our energy at two things. One is at ourselves. It's learning, exploring, challenging ourselves, etc., etc. So working on ourselves first. And second, it's to create the conditions for the system of which we are part of to grow, to be lively, we need to nurture the system and cultivate the system rather than intervene directly on others to try to change others.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Jen, I'm just going to throw a question to you, which is off the back of what Celine has talked about, and it was a question that cropped up in the chat panel just a little earlier, and I don't want to lose it. It came from Triska, and Triska asked, "What do leaders?" And the question was for you, Jen. That's why I'm asking you, and then I'll go to the rest of the panel. So the rest of the panel, I haven't forgotten you either. But what do leaders need to change from? To, and Triska, if you want to jump in as well and reframe that question, if I haven't captured it, please do. But that was my understanding of the question in the chat panel. So leaders need to change from what to what was the question. You're on mute.
Right, good. I'm happy to answer it, but Triska, do you want to come off mute? Tell us what's on your mind.
Yes, I'm happy to come off mute. I'm here in Melbourne. It's 7:30. We're here at the family dinner. I've got my husband and 3 tweens listening in to these amazing people from all around the world. I feel very honoured to have the opportunity to be here, Jen, so thank you so much. I posed the question earlier on in the piece because I was so inspired by all the introductions. I was wondering, what is the burning platform that leaders need, that your observation is? And I think some of the answers to that has come through the later discussion. Yeah. But, is there something more immediate that you really are concerned about and worried about leaders today that you think we really need to be mindful of, and what do they need to move from, and therefore what should they become and what should they move to?
Yeah, fantastic. Great question. Thanks, Triska. And hi, fam. Hope you're enjoying. Look, I think it feels like there's a precondition for that question, Triska. The precondition is, and this is what I'm seeing at the moment, is that a lot of leaders think, okay, we got over last year, we can just return to normal now, that, it's all about bringing everybody back to the workplace, or, there'll be a return to what life was like before. And I just don't think that is the case. I think that last year was the taste of what is to come. And so with that in mind, it's not so much what leaders need to change from to be, but more about how they need to lead. So what was their skill set and capability prior was effective for many. However, it's not going to be effective in the future in the face of continuing disruptive change. And so, for me, it's really about this broadening of what's my go-to as a leader in able to lead change continuously when it's disruptive change. You think about climate crisis, you think about social inequality, you think about gender, you think about, and that's on the outside of the organisation. Now look at what's happening inside the organisation, the gig economy, the emphasis on employee experience, all those kind of things. It's really quite massive to be facing into and isn't returning to this nice, tidy, stable state.
Great points. And I thought that tied in really well with that second question. That's why I wanted to bring it in now. So I haven't forgotten Sean. Sean, go.
Can I just actually add to that? Because I think it's a really interesting question. And Jen sort of spoke about something there about this mindset about returning to the way things were. And I remember when we come into the end of 2020 and everyone's going, I can't wait for the end of 2020. We're looking forward to 2021 and things are going to come back to the way they were. And we're now in, kind of mid-May, and we all know that that's, a flawed assumption. And I think the same holds true in a work professional sense as well. And so what I find really challenging, and I don't necessarily have the answer for it, but for me as a leader, I'm working in a university and an industry that is absolutely being disrupted, and the need for change, need to change, is very real. That there is that burning platform, and so there's that need for urgency. What I find also very interesting, and I've used SCARF, and I mentioned it in the chat before, really found an interesting framework, and maybe that's me being an IT guy, loving structure and things like that. But I really like the elements there of certainty and autonomy, because my team's been through a mass change in the last 12 to 15 months. They actually don't know, where the future is. And so it's like that empathetic leadership that we need, where you nurture somebody. It's the gardening part of it. You nurture your team and give them some love, but you're doing it remotely whilst trying to balance that urgency to move to something different. I think that's a really interesting challenge for leaders to get that balance right between a new form of, I guess, gardening, empathetic leadership, but that absolute disruption's happening and we need to move. So, as a leader, I said, I don't necessarily have the answer, but they're the challenges that we're kind of facing into every day, and you can see your team struggling with that. What does the future mean for them? So that's that real, I guess, being able to tap into that emotion and help them feel safe and still progress.
And there's a question here from Gilbert, which is relevant to all this, is in their organisations, who can leaders turn to for help with those challenges ahead that we've identified? What are your thoughts on that? And Melissa, I haven't heard from you yet on the panel with a question, so you can go first on this one.
I actually kind of forgot I was a panelist for there for a while. I was just really interested in listening to everybody. I just was really enjoying the conversation. Look, you know what? I'm actually probably not the right person to answer that particular question about who people should go to. So I'm very happy for somebody else to tackle that.
Sure, that's open for the panel anyway, but go ahead and listen.
Well, yeah, I guess the thoughts that I had bringing to this and that I think really align with a lot of the things that people have been talking about, and that kind of burning platform that Triska talked about. For me, it's around trust. And I know trust is talked about a lot, and I think we sort of bounce it around, and it's a bit perhaps a bit worn as a concept, but I actually still think that it's something that we really need to pay attention to, because one of the things I think that leaders have learned and are still learning now is that for many of them, they pretty much had to take a massive withdrawal out of their trust bank in the last 12 months, right? They built up a trust bank with people, and they really just had to, let people just rely on that trust without being able to really return it in some ways because of the uncertainty. And so I think the preparedness around that trust is really important. The other thing is, just quickly, I actually chatted to a few of the leaders that I work with today to ask them about this. And one of the themes that came through from the people that I talked to was the sort of humanness of it all, the fact that every one of their team became a human, like everyone was a person with their own unique circumstances and their own unique situation. And for some people the working from home was an absolute miracle, and they loved it, and it couldn't have been better for their lifestyle and for their family and whatever. For other people it was incredibly difficult. And so as leaders, they had to learn to view their people as individuals and to have kind of tailored and personalized approaches for people, not just their resources that they manage. So I thought that was an interesting thing, and to me it again ties into trust and humanity.
Great, thanks for that. Just let's just revisit Gilbert's question. Did anyone on the panel want to also jump in on that? Who do leaders turn to, apart from people like Jen? Go on, Helen, thanks.
Yeah, so, when I think about what I see in my system and my own practice as a leader, and advice I'd give about moving forward that I think ties several of these themes up, I'd probably talk about belonging. And how as leaders, we create a profound sense of belonging for people, because it's when we do that, when we create an incredible sense of shared purpose together, we make it safe for people, that I think, real magic happens. And we saw that so many times in our health and care system during the last year, that, people who maybe do jobs like being an orderly or a cleaner, behind the scenes, invisible, because we came together in this incredible circumstances with shared purpose and built a profound sense of belonging for everybody in the team, nobody left out. It meant that really amazing things could happen. And we talk about a lot about diversity and inclusion. Diverse, and of course they're important, but diversity is statistics, inclusion's a strategy, but belonging's a feeling, and we create that feeling when people kind of come and feel part of the team, and it's about like the unique things that each person brings, because very often we say we want to be inclusive, come and be in our team, but actually it's assimilation, because we're saying to people, come and be in our team, but on our terms, and fit in and keep your real self quiet. But actually true belonging, it seems to me, is when everybody brings the absolute unique things that they have. And I know we haven't got much time, but just to tell a little story about that. We had a big group of people in health and care in England, in the National Health Service, who were what we call shielders. And overnight in March 2020, they were told, you can't come to work anymore, because thousands and thousands of our NHS people couldn't come to work anymore, doing the jobs that they loved and that were passionate about, because they had pre-existing conditions, which meant they had to shield and stay at home. And there's one hospital called Bart's Hospital in London, and overnight, 600 people found that they were shielders, and they were stopped from coming to work, and they had to stay at home and be isolated. And when Celine talked about steering, what the leaders did in that organisation was that they actually created the conditions for those shielders to build their own network. And, they did the most amazing things during the year, and it meant all of them continue to play a role throughout the year and do valuable things for that hospital in the situation it found itself in. And also in mental health terms, some of the people that had the worst mental health were people that were shielding because they were so isolated, and they came together and they created choirs and they supported each other. And it was completely non-hierarchical. And the way that they did that was by leaders steering towards creating that sense of belonging and shared purpose. And I think that's something I'd hope we really will take into, the next phase of leadership.
Yeah, that's a fantastic story. And I really hope too, Helen, that people will capture the learnings of what worked well under those situations and do a mini retrospective, if you like, on, you know, what can we take away from this and learn from it? Because like Sean said, you know, while COVID was a disruptor, it was also something like a catalyst or an accelerant for other things, which have been really positive in many ways. Thank you for sharing that. We have another question. I'm just fielding all the questions now, so I think it's open to the group, which is fantastic. This one's from Wayne Knox, who's looking forward to reading your book, Jen, and is interested by the different change environments and maturity around change that we find ourselves in, UK, Australia, US, and other parts of Europe or Asia. And this could go to anyone in the panel. Do you think there's a generic change leader, or are there geographical dimensions or considerations that have been observed around the globe?
Can I have a crack at that one?
Sure.
It's an interesting question. I've had the privilege, I guess, in my career of working on every continent except Antarctica. And so
Still
I think
time, Sean.
Still time, yes.
Yeah.
Still time. And it's interesting. I think you could, for me, I think you can use the same frameworks, but there are absolutely cultural differences that you need to take into consideration. And so in a prior role, I was across in South Africa probably about 4 months of the year. And the way I had to engage with my team in South Africa was very, very different to the way that I had to engage with the team in Australia. And it's just, you know, those cultural differences around hierarchy and et cetera, and the way that you had to engage with, you know, the South African team, and the way you had to craft your message and engage with them was very different to how you had to do it with Australians. And then likewise in the UK, where you'd have, you know, I had English people working for me, I had Americans, et cetera. So I don't think there can ever be a generic approach to this. I think the frameworks probably stand okay, but you've got to be able to tailor your conversation to your people, really. And so I think it's always been different, and that would be still very true now, I would suspect.
Okay, thanks. Were there any other perspectives on that one?
Yeah, I've been lucky to work with people from all around the world as well in global initiatives. So people together from North America, Europe, India, all together. So you couldn't have more different cultures in a single initiative, and yet it worked super well because we all want to somehow, in the right conditions, we all want to contribute to something bigger than ourselves. That's a deep, deep human value that transcends cultural differences. So of course, then the application, the operationalization, etc., all this comes in different shades, which is fantastic because it brings diversity to and openness to people involved. But really, there's a one, I think, human commonality, which is this value-driven, purpose-driven nature. You know,
yeah,
we all have that.
Okay, thank you, fantastic. We've got another question coming up. Sorry, Jillian, did you want to add?
I just wanted to reflect back on Jen's book, because I think that's the thread between all those points, is there's a really kind of resounding humanity in all of those. And I think that within that is how you show up as a human. And showing up as a human to the humans around you means that you're naturally observing, engaging with what's in front of me, not what do I expect to be in front of me, or do I hope to be in front of me. It's who's in front of me right now, and how do I engage with them with the degree of self-awareness and awareness of my surroundings that allows us to have the kind of conversations and relationships that have integrity. And I think that that's what you've broken down and concretized really nicely in your book, Jen, is taking ideas that for some people might sound quite abstract in terms of, you know, showing up as a human, and making them like concrete points of reflection and action. And that means that wherever you show up in the world, you're able to be present to who's with you. And I think that's what the past year has forced us to do, is to be present both to ourselves and to the people who we're working with more.
Great thoughts. I'm going to read out one more question and see how we're going for time, with a comment that if we meet the 8 o'clock time slot, 8 o'clock being over here, if the hour is up, Jen has agreed to stay back for 20 minutes or so afterwards to make sure that your questions are indeed answered as well. But this one is from Sue Danner from New Zealand, acknowledging that direct intervention is a blunt tool. When you encounter an organisational leader who's struggling to release control, and it's manifesting in toxic behaviour towards staff, how do you help to shift that? Can you, in fact, shift that? And is there a point where you just walk away? It might be a Celine question, but it's obviously open to the panel and to Jen, of course.
Like, Celine's got a great blog post on this. Celine, can you drop that into the chat? That would be awesome if you can.
Sure, with pleasure.
Look, I think the answer on this one, Sue, is, and I think we've been asked this question in both sessions today, the morning and the lunchtime one. So, it's clearly it's a pain point for many people. And I think the answer is you need a case-by-case basis. On my better days, I would say treat the conversation with that leader with the spirit of curiosity and compassion to see if you can surface what's actually going on. What is the emotion that's actually creating those behaviours that act out? On my not so better days, on the days when I don't have energy, it's just walk away. Like, life is too short. You've got a skill set. There'll be people who want to work with you. So, for me, it's a case by case. You can affect change with people who are really, really toxic, but you need the reward to be there. There needs to be a lot to justify why you go to that level of emotional energy to work with that person.
Okay. Thanks, Jen. I know it has come up every session, probably comes up in every conversation we also have with people. Doesn't it? I remember in the last session, someone said, pick your battles, choose your battles wisely. It was their advice on that one. Are there any more questions? A couple of people need to drop off. We're coming into the last 7 minutes of the session, so I can start to wrap up and tell you a little bit more about Jen. And thanks for popping in the blog post there, Celine. Okie dokie. So we've had a great session, our third of 3, and really generous for the panel to give their time to this gathering, and to those of you who've come along. It's been fantastic. Panel members, this is your opportunity now. We'll go around to promote your latest endeavour or your parting words of wisdom for the group just before we wrap up. Might start, I'll just pick Jill now and just go across my screen, if that's okay. You just randomly landed on my screen. So what are you thinking, Jill?
Off mute.
Off mute.
You think you're never going to do it again, and then you do. I'm thinking that I'm grateful that I'm here, and that for all of the pain of the past year, it has spawned work like yours, Jen, to come forth, and conversations like this to happen, and for platforms like this to enable this kind of conversation. And I think that that's the moment that we have right now. To genuinely begin within our own hearts and heads to engage with uncertainty as possibility, to recognize how it challenges us, and then to hold that and to move with that into, okay, cool, so now what might it enable me to do? Because I think all of us have those examples from the past year. And as you've rightly framed your book, Jen, it's just more and more and more of that. It might not be on a grand scale, it might be on a granular scale, but how we find learning and evolution within the continued disruption, I think is our challenge, and it's our great gift that the 21st century is giving us. And with my work, and I've got more, a book coming out myself over the course of the next months called The Explorer's Way, which is about not how we become some, better version of ourselves in order to do that, but how we actually tap into our instinctive exploratory capacities to do that. We used to be really, really good at stepping into uncertainty when we were very small people, and we tend to lose that as we get older, as we hold on to the known and to status and to that which makes us feel secure. And I think we all have a capacity to go beyond limitations that perhaps is untapped. So I'm really looking forward to continuing to have the opportunity to work with people like you, Jen, and others to see how we continue to evolve in the years ahead.
Thanks so much, Jill. We'll quickly go around the panel. Sean, parting words.
Thanks, Lena. For me, if I was to think about a legacy I'd like to leave for Swinburne, it's all about student experience. Our purpose is to educate and educate our future leaders, and what we can do to make their experience as productive and enjoyable and as sticky as possible in this converged world. For me, that's what gets me up in the morning. I think also if you like delivering change, and I kind of half laughed at Jen's sort of descriptive in the book around VUCA and how the VUCA world is now sort of on steroids. But if you like a challenge of delivering change through disruption, now's your time. Now's the time. So it's a great time to be in the profession, kind of thing. So for me, there's a lot of exciting opportunity.
I agree. Thanks, Sean. Celine.
Yes, thank you very much, Lena. My last sentence will come from the book. Page 76, and I love to quote this book. I read it with a lot of attention. Liberation always comes at a price. It will cost you courage, bravery, and vulnerability. And I would add, it also comes with great rewards.
Lovely, lovely words. Thanks, Celine. Melissa.
Sorry, unmute. I think I guess my parting words are that I guess it echoes what was mentioned earlier about, being back to normal. There is no back to normal. And in fact, we're not at anywhere near the end of this. And also, I think that we need to remember the greater context of what's happened in the world and the role that plays on people's employment. We think about sort of their work and who they are at work and coming to work, but people have suffered all kinds of experiences in the last 12 months, and it has impacted all kinds of things, including the level of trust they place in authority. And that is something I think all organisations need to bear in mind as part of the context and when they're communicating anything, including change, to their employees.
Fantastic, thanks. Helen, parting words for us.
Okay, so my parting words, Lena, go back to actually its reflection on what Jen said right at the beginning of this session. And actually, the people, the leaders that have actually done the best during COVID were the ones that had already prepared themselves. And just thinking about that in context, really, what strikes me is that people think that the pandemic was like some, incredible thing that came and the world was turned upside down. And actually, if you think about a lot of the things that happened during the pandemic and the changes and progressive things, they were all happening anyway. It was like a direction was happening. And in a sense, COVID-19 speeded them up, and actually, we're not going to go backwards. So we're not suddenly going to. It's not going to suddenly slow down again. I think things are going to stay at this very fast pace, and as leaders, we need to be ready for it. So let's think about disruption in that context, which is a word that's been used a lot in this session. And what strikes me is that disruption in this context isn't about hurtling round like Exocet missiles creating havoc in organizations. Actually, the best disruptors are the people with the best relationships, because actually to do disruption in an organization, you have to have trust and relationship and connection. And I think, the very best disruption comes from relationship and connection. If there was ever a time, that we needed that, it's as we move into this post-pandemic world.
Yeah. Well said, very well said. And Sean, quickly, Luke, quickly, your parting words, and then we will all say our farewells.
All right. So my parting words about this book is that the real promise of this book is not in the manuscript itself, in my opinion, but I really and sincerely hope that it will deliver on another level. The conversations that this will enable and the permission that we create to talk about these topics, and I really hope that this book will deliver on that specific promise, the conversations that it will enable and the permission that it puts into the space. So that's my highest hopes for this manuscript, and for Jen, because Jen is a good person to hold this conversation, to start this conversation.
Yeah.
And thank you for having me again.
Thanks, Luke. I'll definitely second that. The book is definitely a great way to nudge and open conversations. Just quickly to wrap up, if you already have the book, please leave it a 5-star review on Amazon. And if you don't have the book, you can easily get one through the links that we've popped in the chat panel just now for you. If the session or the book's given you a thirst for more opportunities to build confidence, clarity, and capability around change leadership, you know that Jen is the person to go to for conversations of change, coffee series, keynote speaking at your offsite, or running sessions through busting silos or agile change leadership development through the Agile Change Leadership Institute, and of course, design and delivery of transformational change. Jen, this is over to you now for parting words.
To wrapping it all,
raise our glasses and congratulate you and thank the panel. And I will hand it over to you for parting words just as we close.
Thank you, Lena. Thank you. Look, I'd just like to say, yes, Lena, thank you so much. You've done so much work behind the scenes as well. And Julianne Demetrios, you're on this call as well. Thank you. I loved Helen's words around those that disrupt are the, is really about the relationships, the strength in relationships. And so I'm very, very grateful for the relationships I have on this panel. And I'm also really grateful for the community, for all of you who've spent this hour to join us in this conversation. You'll get a link. These will be saved as videos. They'll come out to you so you can see the other two as well. But really, all I offer you is be kind, supportive, and go do some great change. Thanks, everybody.